Hey there, listeners. Long time no talk, but it will be a lot of talking because today we just got a little two-hander. But we'll get to that. First of all, let's cover all the news that I haven't covered since 191, and there's been a lot. As always, we kick it off with Tina Ola's continued work on Crowdfunding Chronicles. She had two new games to cover for us. The first is Whateverland, which is a Burton-esque looking adventure game graphic novel that has a lot of style and looks really compelling. The other thing she covered is Coven Path of Redemption, and if you loved your Baldur's Gates and other CRPGs of the day, this might be up your alley, because it's looking like a neat retro isometric looking kind of game. Continuing into the rest of the features department, we started off with a review by Des Miller with the producer and game designer of Brigandine: The Legend of Runeseria. So if you want to see what Kazuhiro Igarashi had to say on the entire process behind this rejuvenation of the series, definitely give it a read. Some really great questions and some compelling answers in there. It's, just a great read. Another incredibly well thought out read is Joe Padilla's feature, To the Top, Virginia and Disunity. Very topical, a very important read, in my opinion, as, Joe gets to the heart of a lot of things. They have just such a great mind for features, so please give it a read and see if you might gather the same kind of lessons, I guess, from the game Virginia. And now we pretty much round things out with a whole pile of reviews, like a lot. We've had a lot of games that we've reviewed over the past few weeks, so let's get into that. I'm going to kick it off with Alana Haggs' review of If Found, which is a visual novel graphic adventure from Dreamfeel. And it looks neat. Like the style of this game is really, it stands out. Like it's a really cool way to tell the story, and she has a lot of good to say about it. So check the game out, check out a review, see if you want to add this to your collection. Alana was also keeping busy back in the world of Pokemon. She went back to the Galar region and the Isle of Armor expansion for Pokemon Sword and Shield. And it's more of the same. It's not without its flaws. But if you wanted more Pokemon Sword and Shield, then you got it with this. And hey, we just talked about this. Brigandine: The Legend of Runeseria. Des Miller also was the one who reviewed the game for us. And again, this looks like a great return to the Brigandine series. Again, not without its flaws, but it's looking pretty sweet on the Switch. And if you need another strategy RPG, this might be a great one for you. We talked about it on episode 191. The Outer Worlds was ported over to the Switch with less than great results. But John Tucker did brave that one for us, and overall still had a great time with it, despite the graphical issues that plague this port. And hey, a review by me. Pillars of Dust was a cool little retro game that I got to get my hands on that comes from Retro Games, retro in the French way, which is not a real thing, but whatever. It's a cool traditional RPG if you just want like a nice little retro experience that's pretty contained. This is a good one to dive into. Did you know Persona 4 Golden got ported? We sure did. Bob Richardson was the one to review that for us, even though I know many people on the staff were quite excited to get into this port. And overall, it's a port. He says it holds up rather well, but it's got some dated issues, which is understandable given when it originally released. So yeah, moving right along. We're almost there. Death Come True was another visual novel that Alana Haggs dove into. This graphic adventure comes from Tokyo Games. And again, if you're wanting a neat little FMV graphic adventure, this will be the one for you. Check it out. Overall, seems like a pretty fun game. The Legend of Heroes Trails of Cold Steel 3 got ported over to the Switch, and it's a great port, apparently. Audra Bowling gave it RPG Fan Editor's Choice. That's how solid it's holding up. And on to the next thing, which is Story of Seasons Friends of Middletown, which comes from a new reviewer on the team, Nikki Fakuri. She had a preview a few weeks back, and if you missed that, the full review is up. It's a fun little return to a classic, what was once a Harvest Moon and is now Story of Seasons game. I, for one, loved it on the PS1. We also did a video review of it, which gave me an excuse to go and play it for that as well. So check out the review and see if this is a fun farming experience to return to. Her Story, the game that we always wanted to talk about on the podcast, and we finally did a few episodes back. Jono Logan's review went live of Her Story, a great FMV graphic adventure. He gave it RPG Fan Editor's Choice, and like he said on the podcast, it's a great experience of a game, so check that out. Boxy Quest: The Gathering Storm was reviewed by Neil Chandran, which it's weird that we got this, but he said it was a lot of fun, even if it has some limited appeal. Overall, he found it to be a surprising game, and it's a neat little RPG Maker game, so if that's your style, go dive into this one. And finally, Minecraft Dungeons. We got that a while back too, and it's just a great little loot hack, apparently, that is all kinds of fun. And finally, we round things out with a music review of Epoch, a tribute to Chrono Trigger. In a strange twist, this one does not come from Patrick Gann. It's actually done by our fearless leader, Mike Salbato, and is just, a beautiful collection of from the Materia Collective, so you know it's going to be a great series of arrangements. Give that album a check, and otherwise enjoy listening, because there's a lot of great music on there. And that's it. That was a lot. Thank you for sticking with me. Or, or not. Maybe you just skipped ahead. You do you. Anyways, on to our next episode, which is now 193 of Random Encounter. Hey there, listeners. It's me. Yeah, we're back again. It's me and Jono, and just me and Jono. So, Jono, say hi to the people, Jono.
Hey, everyone.
There we go. It's a short little episode this week. Just kind of, we've had a lot going on, and we just figure we'll pick up and catch back up since Jono and I have basically been on a nice little break for like the better part of a month. So,
I have no idea what happened. I just blacked out, and all of a sudden there was another random episode posted with a group of really awesome people.
All these weird strangers are coming to do a better job than we did. But no, on that note, yeah, Joe, you did a fantastic job of hosting things on the presumption that you are listening. Maybe Joe only listens to episodes that they host. I don't know when they're on. But no, Joe, they did a great job. And everybody, all the guests who came on, just some really great conversation. We've been getting some really great feedback from it. And I'm so glad that listeners have been just so great about giving us the feedback on that. And that everyone was so willing to come on and talk about their experiences in the gaming community. With regards to the LGBTQ plus community conversation. So thank you so much for having that combo, folks, and giving us a break.
This is something we might do in the future, too, a few more times. We really, really like how it turned out. We thought it was a amazing conversation, and that kind of thing should happen more often.
Yeah, as I said to everybody, like anything, anyone that wants to bring forward more voices that aren't us two white dudes talking, I am all for. On this podcast, so we want.
We love talking. We love talking, but
what white male doesn't?
Exactly, but we can shut up if the need calls for it. We can quiet ourselves down.
Yeah, so we want to bug Steph, get her back on with Ladies' Night. We'll want to get some more folks back on to talk more with Joe, probably running another episode. And we'll see what other representation our vast staff members bring to the table. Because, the more voices we can get on here that offer differing opinions from ours, I'm all for. So thank you, everyone, once again for listening to that and being so great and open with it all. And for myself, like I said, I appreciated the break. And I was on vacation, I guess, as that was kind of going up, which is funny because I was already in vacation mode and had forgot, I need to post that. It's so easy when I did none of the work on it to forget that I still had to do some work on it. So I realized, I need to post. I need to get a title from Joe and a little breakdown. Anyways, we got it up. Our fearless leader, Mike Salbato, helped post it up while I was on the road to Alberta, going through the Rockies where reception wasn't great. So that was pretty good. And what did you do with your little vacation time off from the podcast, Jono?
Oh, pretty much the same thing I do all the time, which is...
try to take over the world.
Oh, that would be lovely because it would give me something to do. No, the last few days, and the days have really lost all of their meaning, and the weeks have lost most of their meaning, and the months too. And we'll see how the rest of the year goes. I'm really excited though because next week my partner and I were going to the cottage, which is something that we do every year. We're going up there for a week. It
sounded like it was in quotations.
The cottage.
We're going to the cottage.
Yes, it did sound slightly ominous.
Yeah, it did. I'm like, what's the cottage?
It's a little shack, which is really nice.
Which
so
does
yeah,
sound
we go.
nice.
Yeah, so we go up there every year, and I guess because the last few months have been so strange, and I'm still not entirely, even though we've been living in this for months now, I'm still not entirely used to it. Because, I mean, it's, I'm in my usual environment, but it's a strange situation going on. So I'm really excited to get to the cottage where, realistically speaking, we're going to be alone in the woods. It's not like we're going to see any more people. But because we do it every single year, it's going to be nice to have a week where there's an air of normality about it, if that makes sense.
I get that. And you don't have to overthink a lot of your interactions and such, too, which is great. Because also, I don't know where the cottage is, but for my to relate my story to it, like where we just went, it was just a world of good just to have a different setting to be in. So my partner Annette, she has her family homestead is in rural Alberta, where they've been since 1872. I think it's one of like the first like farms established in that area. Anyway, beautiful tract of land, nice little old farm that now is more or less just a family gathering point more than anything, and then they rent out the land and such. They have horses and cows and stuff on it, and it's cool to go and explore. And explore we did. But yeah, it's nice just to have the change of pace and scenery. And in that specific area, like in and around there, they don't have a lot of cases of COVID-19. So a lot of people, it's a very different change of pace. And if anything, we were more concerned to make sure we weren't bringing anything with us. But it was much more easier just to kind of feel a bit more relaxed. Not that we went into town or anything at all. But when her family and stuff came to visit us on the farm, it was a lot easier just to be like, oh, these are people we can hug. These are people we can, expand our boundaries a bit more with. And like Gwen's able to interact with people. And so it was nice in that regard.
That does sound really, really lovely.
And I learned how to play cornhole. We beat the ladies. So, haha, take that. And
I have no idea what you're talking about at all.
It's essentially like a beanbag thing. Where it's like throwing the beanbag into the hole thing. Kind of like almost like the slider thing, but just from a certain, I think it's like 30-foot distance or something like that. And if you land it on the plank of wood, you get a point. But if you can get it in the hole, it's 3 points. And then the other team can obviously match shot for shot, and so you can break even, and nobody gets points, and it goes to like 21. And then it's like classic board game rules where you have to make like the exact roll, so you have to hit exactly 21. Whereas if you go over, you have to go back to your previous score until you can actually match. So it was fun. But we got
a cross between beanbags, bowling, and, well, blackjack.
And skee ball. And blackjack, yeah, exactly.
Yep.
And so that was a lot of fun. And that blames on the fact that we're playing in the morning, so no one was drinking. So she's like, I just didn't have a beer in my hand. That's why she was shorthanded. Because traditionally, usually that's how it works. But we did lose terribly at lawn bowling. Or not lawn bowling. Bocce ball. That's the one.
Bocce ball? What's the difference?
Bocce ball, it's more like curling.
Okay.
In the sense of it's like lawn bowling with curling. So there's like a little white ball that you throw, and then each team has 4 throws to see who will land closest to the ball, and then they score for that round. And then you throw it 30 feet away again, and then go again. So we did okay, but
played this before.
Yeah, it was fun.
A few years ago, my one of my best friends from theater school, his partner, now his wife, he always wanted to go to lawn bowling. He always wanted to lawn bowl. So for his birthday, she got
deceptively fun.
Yeah, she got a bunch of friends together, and we went lawn bowling. And it was somewhere in Toronto, and it was everyone who worked there was British and old, and they were very, very lovely, and they seemed very entertained by all of us because we were like all in our late 20s. And it was a lovely time. I discovered that my bowling abilities do not translate well over to lawn bowling, however.
I'd be so long I forget exactly how it plays, but it's fairly similar, right?
Yeah, it is. But I mean, the thing about bowling, I mean, a little bit of trivia about me. Back when I was a teenager, I was like a league bowler in Nova Scotia, and without any modesty, I was very, very good at it, which it probably explains why I'm so good at that mini game in Yakuza. It's a different game. It's small ball. Like the balls are, yeah, they're a little small. They're smaller. They're about the size of a little bit bigger than a softball. Just as heavy as a regular one, and the pins are candlesticks. So instead of being like bottles, they are like tapered on either ends and get a little bit fatter in the middle. and this is the bowling I grew up with, and I'm very, very good at it. And then I came to Ontario and discovered that if I threw the ball, I would likely go with the ball, because they're so friggin' big. And that's kind of the norm. I had no idea that bowling was any different anywhere else in Canada or the United States than it was in Nova Scotia.
That's interesting, actually.
Yeah, but anyway, the point is that
surprisingly few people who are former league bowlers. It's weird.
Yeah, the point is that the point of bowling is you throw the ball as hard as you can to try to knock as many pins over as you can. But if you try to throw the ball as hard as you can when you're lawn bowling, you're going to go way past the goal. Or the point. I can't remember what it's called exactly.
Yeah. But there's also a lot more friction to deal with than the regular bowling. So anyway.
Yeah, so my aim would be impeccable, but the ball would just like sail past where it was supposed to go.
Yeesh. That's still fun though. We did in Ontario Youth Parliament, I think is when I was introduced to it. We did like an old school theme night for one of our like cabinet meetings. We had the cabinet meeting weekends were always like getaways at a host city, and then there's usually an activity on like the Saturday night, and I think one of the activities was go lawn bowling. So we're all like a bunch of people dressed up in whatever they could find at like secondhand stores in Argyle and whatever else, and we went lawn bowling, and yeah, we were definitely the youngest people per capita at that moment in that place. So it was a good time.
Sounds lovely.
Right? But yeah, getting out is important. If you have the opportunity to do that while you're still in isolation, go somewhere and do it safely. Don't go to Disney World.
I cannot imagine going to Disney World right now. And it's open. It's wide open.
Anyways, that's a whole different discussion, but there's lots of poor choices being made out there.
Yeah, to be fair, when Disney did decide to open it, things were looking great. And that's why like all the sports teams and everyone were looking at Florida and thinking, oh, we're going there. That's the place to have our games and theme parks and stuff like that. And that turned into a difficult situation for everyone.
And I mean, I will grant that I'm sure, just like most places, they're doing everything they can to make it as clean and good as possible. The fact that it's outside does help. And if everyone's wearing masks, it actually could be a pretty cool time. Just unfortunately, there is a lot of people who are still being very stubborn about the whole mask thing. So I don't know if I would want to chance it.
Well, I think that Disney, I think there is mandatory masks at Disney World.
Oh, good.
Because, I mean, that's just, if you don't wear a mask, they'll just kick you out. That's the nice thing about Disney. It's its own little country within Florida. Actually, it's its own little municipality, actually. I've been watching, like a guilty pleasure of mine is to watch, I'm a huge fan of theme park history. And just out of curiosity, I was watching some of the usual vloggers and stuff like that who were invited to Disney's first opening day. And it's really strange to see because when you picture Disney, the place is packed. Like there's just, and in this case, like it looks empty. It looks like a almost a ghost town. Like there's people there, and like the wait on rides is like 30 minutes, 20 minutes, 15 minutes to get on like the Haunted Mansion and Pirates of the Caribbean, and that's just unheard of.
It'd be great for Smuggler's Run. Yeah.
So I mean, pretty much. So if you hate lines, I guess that it's a fantastic time to go to Disney. I don't like lines, but I like them a heck of a lot more than getting COVID-19.
That's it, right? It's just not worth it. But yeah.
Also, I suspect a lot of their attractions are closed. I mean, yeah, like the rides and things like that, but there are a lot of shows inside there. So I think they still have the limits on gatherings in spaces. So,
which is a good plan. So again, like it could be okay, but it's just, your mileage may vary.
Yeah, I mean, I hope it's safe. I think the only parks open right now are Disney World and Animal Kingdom. I don't think that Disney Studios or Epcot or any of the water parks are open yet.
Oh, gotcha. Which makes sense. I mean, yeah. Anyways, that's a whole thing.
Yeah.
We've caught up, and that's it for today's episode. Everyone, thanks for tuning in. No, we played video games. That happened. We do still do that here at RPG Fan. Get out of town, right? We've had some recent releases. We've had some stuff that people have gone back to play. Jono, you dipped way back into March for one of the games you played today. Well, not today, but you know what I mean. Talking about today. There we go.
Yeah, there was a game that came out in March that it's a game it's like it was tailor-made for me. because I love Ace Attorney and I love Picross, and Murder by Numbers is both. It's a puzzle virtual novel sort of thing. It's the 90s, and your main character is Honor, and she's the co-star of a TV show called Murder Mystery, and it's a murder investigative show. And she is fired. The producer calls her up to his office and fires her without any kind of explanation.
Rude.
And yeah, very rude. And then she leaves, and minutes later, he's found dead in his office. And we don't know why. Yeah, so the police show up, and they're talking to everyone, and she wants to know what happened, and she wants to have her own investigation. Meanwhile, completely independent of this, a small flying robot who looks like a monitor flies up to her and says that the robot is looking for a detective because it wants to figure out its origins. So the two of them go off on this adventure together where they investigate various crimes. First, the producer's murder, and then other crimes on top of that, and try to figure out where this little robot came from, named Scout. And that's it. And it's not the heaviest game in the universe, although there are some heavy themes. But the point is, it's inspired strongly by Ace Attorney, in terms of the style, even the sound effects, like when the dialogue is coming across the screen, that's exactly what it is in Murder by Numbers. So it's a really good spin on it. And the big difference, of course, is Picross. Now, have you ever done Picross, Greg?
I haven't, actually. I mean, my closest I've gotten to is like a lot of free demos and stuff that were big when the DS and the 3DS were in their prime, like the Pokemon Picross and stuff like that, but I never actually dabbled in it.
Yeah, I very, very much got him. Like I bought copies of every single one that came out on the DS and the 3DS, and I would spend hours playing these things. For some reason, yeah, huge nerd. For some reason, the concept of Picross, or nonograms, I believe they're also called, really clicks with me. I don't know why. Sometimes certain kind of puzzles just really click with your brain, and these do. So the point is that every time you are investigating a scene, Scout scans the room, and whenever Scout sees something, his scanner has to identify it, and to identify it, you need to solve a Picross puzzle. And that is an interesting mechanic, and it somewhat fits in the game. The characters, and Scout especially, are absolutely adorable, really well-rounded, and the game actually deals with a lot of subject matter that Ace Attorney has never touched before, like LGBTQ plus themes, emotional spousal abuse, things like that. And I know.
Seeing as this is from the Hatful Boyfriend crew, I feel like touching on never before touched on subjects is definitely in the wheelhouse.
No, that's not saying the game is perfect. In fact, I wrote a review for it. The review should be up pretty soon. It might be up by the time this episode goes up, or maybe not sure. Spoiler, I liked it a lot, because again, it's like the game was meant for me. It's a cross between Ace Attorney and Picross. However, I'm very aware in the review that if you don't love Picross or you don't love Ace Attorney, then this game might not be a game that clicks with you. I think it's something rather special. I very much enjoyed it. But, your mileage may vary if you don't really like puzzle games. And there are some problems with it, like the puzzles oftentimes get in the way of the story. Because early on, the puzzles there's a really nice difficulty curve in terms of the puzzles. Like early on in the first chapter, the puzzles are pretty simple. And they gradually get harder as the game progresses, as you'd hope. And then by the end of the game, you're dealing with some actually rather hard 20 by 20 grid puzzles. And that's fine, but the problem is, early on, the puzzles take you like 2, 3, 5 minutes at most to beat. And then at the end of the game, they're taking you anywhere from like 15 to 20 minutes if you end up on a really, really hard puzzle. And if you're in the middle of a very tense moment in the story, like you're locked in a room and someone's banging on the door with a gun and they're going to shoot you, or you're locked in a burning bathroom at one point in the game, having to spend 20 minutes to do a Picross puzzle all of a sudden in the middle of it sort of...
That's a big suspension of disbelief, I guess.
Yeah, and there's no timer on it either. Like if there was a timer on certain kinds of puzzles, There are when you're hacking, that's another little mini game, but like if you're in a very dangerous situation, you can take as long as you want. Also, a problem with that is when you switch over to the puzzle mode, the music changes, and there are like 3 or 4 different puzzle themes, but all of them, for the most part, are kind of bouncy and happy. So if you're like in the middle of a really tense, dramatic situation, and you ask Scout to scan for a way out, and Scout sees a window and scans it, and then it switches over to the happy, bouncy music as you have to solve a Picross in order to get out. It kills the momentum of the story.
That sounds like a fun sketch waiting to happen, though.
Yeah. Hang on. I think I got this row.
She's like, find us a way out of here. I did, but I can't tell you about it unless you solve this puzzle. She's like, gosh dang it, we're going to burn alive.
That's pretty much the game, actually. The game has a lot going for it in terms of its story. It has one of the best opening. There's a theme song at the beginning of it because it's kind of themed after a bit of a '90s cartoon show.
Dope.
Yeah, and there's a classic like '90s style theme song with an opening credits sequence that starts up every single time you play the game, which really sets the stage nicely.
And the art looks great too. Like it's a really lovely looking game.
It is. The game uses almost paper cutouts instead of pixel art or anything like that. Vaguely, it's not anime, but it's almost anime inspired.
Yeah, it's a very Western anime style.
Yeah, exactly. But no, I was a big fan of this game. And I think that if you love puzzle games, if you love Picross, if you love doing, there's a YouTube channel that has broken through in the last couple of months since COVID-19 started, calling Cracking the Cryptid, and it's just 2 guys solving puzzles. If you have ever watched that channel and you want to get some experience playing puzzles, I think that Murder by Numbers is a really accessible way to start playing Picross.
It sounds like, a great combination of things. So it's not just simply just about the puzzles or just about the crime solving. It sounds like a good natural marriage. How heavy is it on, I guess, the 90s nostalgia?
It is pretty heavy on the 90s nostalgia. Like, all the fashion, obviously, is very, very 90s sitcom inspired. There are a lot of references in the first couple of chapters to the 90s that kind of make, it's like they're ribbing you and going, do you remember this? Do you remember who this guy was? Or do you remember this show? And then that slowly starts to peter off as the game continues, which I don't mind at all. I find the problem with, I think I mentioned this in my Yakuza 0 review a long time ago. The problem with a lot of period pieces in games, movies, television set is that they seem to want to rib the audience and just like really, really point out that it's this decade. And for me, that kind of defeats the purpose of a period piece. If I'm watching a period piece, I want it to really feel like that decade, like that place. Instead of like winking at the audience and being
The 80s weren't just busy being the 80s and saying, hey, remember that you're still in the 80s?
Yeah.
Like, no, you were just there. Like, and I get it. They're trying to play on the nostalgia, but also how many gamers are going to get that nostalgia? Because there's a lot of much younger gamers than people who were around in the 80s. Mm-hmm. I mean, if they handle it more like, say, Archer, the series does with their references, where they'll just throw out stuff. They don't explain it. They make a reference, and it's up to you to go look it up if you want. Mm-hmm. But they're not just saying, like, just so you know, this was from the 80s.
And I mean, I say this without loving the show, but like Mad Men is a really good example of how to do a period piece, because although they do like make a couple of inside jokes to what's coming in the future, it's never really there. For the most part, it feels like you're genuinely watching that time in that place.
Yeah, and it's just the time serves the story as opposed to the time just being there for a plot device or like as the butt of a joke.
Yeah, exactly. And I feel like this game does that early on, and then it starts petering off as the game continues, and then it just starts becoming an interesting, engaging story that happens to take place in the 1990s. And I mean, it has to. Cool. It has to, because I mean, Scout is a artificial intelligent robot that looks like a giant monitor on rockets. And has like an incredible amount of memory for the time, but you can't really put Scout next to an iPhone because Scout loses. So the only way you can really make Scout look high tech and interesting is if you put it into a decade where cell phones were bricks.
Yeah, I buy that. What was the name of that? Do you name it the monitor character that was in Planescape Torment? Makes me think of Nordom, who's a Modron. That's right. They're the mechanical creatures from one of the Outer Planes. Anyways, it was giving me very Nordom vibes of this, again, little sentient, cutting-edge, futuristic thing that now, would just be the equivalent of an old iMac.
Except a little bit less stylish. That's kind of one of the things I like about Scout. The design is, I think the design is adorable because it kind of looks like a 90s computer monitor.
Yeah, it's very function over form.
Yeah,
it looks very 80s, 90s as it is, where everything was just a block.
Exactly. And actually, there's a section in the game where, I mean, we had the LGBTQ episode last week, but I think this is a great game that uses LGBTQ plus themes in it without really drawing attention to it or pointing at it in places.
They're just there and they're just people?
Yeah, and the problem is that occasionally they will go into after school special mode where like someone will come along who doesn't like there's a detective character and there's an entire section in
the guy that looks like Stan Lee?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. There's a section, I think it's the third chapter, where there's a lot of references to drag pop culture from the 1980s, like someone drives a giant float shaped like a shoe into the side of a drag bar.
And I just watched that movie.
Yeah. And you did?
I'm assuming that's referencing
Priscilla.
Priscilla, the Queen of the Desert. Yeah.
Yeah, I was an usher at the Princess of Wales Theatre when Priscilla, Queen of the Desert, the musical, was there. I must have seen the show.
Oh, it's so fun.
Oh, it's a great show. I love it. But it's like with any show. Eventually, you're just like, your eyes are just falling out of your head because you've seen the show approximately 47 times.
Yeah, I get that.
Yeah. Anyway, so there are drag characters in the show there are drag characters in the game, and there are parts where the detective's like, I don't know what to call them, and they have a little after school special kind of conversation with the detective. And you know what? That's fine because it feels. I
think those conversations do still need to happen at the moment.
Oh, they absolutely do.
Yeah.
I just wish that the conversation, the dialogue was a little bit more organic. But at the same time, because it's kind of styled after a 90s cartoon show, it doesn't really bother me that much because 90s cartoon show had the more you know sort of sections.
Yeah, I buy that.
And I mean cool. And there's like an entire section where Scout has a conversation. Up to that point, everyone's referring to Scout as he, and Scout says, I'm not a he, I'm not a she. I don't really have a gender. And someone's like, well, we can refer to you as they, and use and that's kind of from that point on, those are Scout's pronouns.
The binary speaking non-binary character.
Yeah, exactly.
That's fun.
Nice way to put it, actually.
Yeah, well, that's I again, like, we're not fully at the place, and we say this knowing we are probably not the right people to be saying this, but from my cisgendered point of view, it seems like we're still at a place where the more on the nose conversation of explaining it in games still needs to happen for people to get what and how to speak about this subject matter, because we're not at a place where it's just part of the normal lexicon. So I think it's good that it's there, and if it's framed in that whole 90s after school special, then you can get away with it, but I can understand too how it would come across a little clunky and heavy-handed depending on how it's thrown in there. But sometimes you just have to have that conversation of take a step back and be like, let me explain this to you. But yeah,
I completely agree. And on the other side of the coin, though, in Murder by Numbers, the main character, Honor, I mean, the game has really great diversity, and Honor is a woman of color. Her mother's in the game. There are a lot of different. There's a lot of diversity in the cast. Honor's ex-husband is a fairly high-powered Hollywood type of guy, and it's very obviously an emotionally abusive relationship. And worse still, her mother is on her ex-husband's side a lot of the times. And throughout the first couple of chapters, he is just gaslighting her repeatedly. And it really is the kind of, there's nothing that he is outwardly doing that makes anyone think he's doing something wrong, but because you know the context and you know what he put her through, she's the scummiest character in the game, and that includes all of the murderers.
Yeah.
And I think it's a very realistic depiction of how that kind of manipulation happens in relationships, and it's something that, you know, your main characters in a lot of games don't really face those issues. And Honor does repeatedly throughout the first couple of chapters, and you really feel for Honor as you know, she's going through all this.
Yeah, no, that's good that they're addressing that too in such a way. And again, hopefully most people as a society are woke enough to get that's being put down.
Yeah.
At any rate, we also got a lot of listener mail. I'm wondering, why don't we just break it up in between instead of just getting a big dump of listener mail? So yeah, people are finally listening to me. It's great. Whenever I ask for things, we finally had a good chunk of listener mail come in. So let's turn over to our inbox and hear from, we'll say Ben M was one of our first to reach out to us way back when in the beginning of June. Yeah, June. So I've already written back to everybody since because we had a special episode in between. I didn't want to bog down that episode already with also making our guest host also go through a mailbag. So I wrote back to everyone and apologized. Thank them all for waiting. And again, everyone who wrote to us, thank you for waiting as we got to address these listener letters on the podcast. So first one comes from Ben M. Benjamin wrote to us, or me and the Runaway Five, whoever we all are. At any rate, they made it a point, he was saying, to tackle a big multi-game RPG series. He had beat, apparently, .hackgu last record earlier in 2020 and has also finished the entire Kingdom Hearts series. So he was looking for something really big to get into. And so naturally he chose Legend of Heroes.
That is an ambitious goal.
Right. Right now, as of the writing of that email, he was into Chapter 2 and 17 hours into Trails in the Sky FC. But to that point, he wanted to give a shout out. To that point, he wanted to give a shout out to Scott, because Scott put together that really great guide. So you want to get into Trails. It was mid last year? Was it last summer? Did he do that? It was last year, I know for sure. I just can't remember when point it was now. But it was a fantastic entry point for anyone who's debating getting into the Legend of Heroes series. And now we have the possibility that the Crossbow games might get translated, maybe. I don't know. That's a hope. So there's more on that. And he played some of those translated for everyone's viewing pleasure on the stream. So he's definitely an authority on it at the moment. So is Alana. So Scott, shout out for putting together that amazing series. He said it really was a huge help to him being a Falcom virgin, getting into the series, and it was helpful. And also, since he's new to the series, he wants to know if there's any tips or tricks for getting through it. I haven't played it yet. How far have you gotten into any of the Trails games?
I started FC and then I did not continue into FC because I looked at what was ahead and I was like, oh, I can't afford to play through this dense pack of games. And that was a few years ago, and I've been meaning to get back into it because it is it's a seminal RPG series that many people on our staff, including Alana and Caitlin, are absolutely just in love with. And because I respect their opinions so much, it's the kind of thing that I want to give it a shot. And yeah, I also read Scott's article. It was in end of December 2019.
Oh, jeepers, was that recent? Okay, COVID's made things feel real long.
I know. Yeah, and we'll for anyone out there who's thinking, this is a series that I would like to, take a look at, we'll make sure that it's going to be in the show notes for you.
Yes, that'll be in the links down below. But yeah, to that point, I guess the first tip then would be carry on with the series. Keep playing it. Don't pull a Jono. But yeah, he actually pointed a question towards Alana for any tips and tricks. But yeah, by that virtue, or by that... but yes, also Caitlin could definitely address those as well, having just plowed through that series last year as well. So at some point, one of them will hopefully get on the episode, and I will readdress that question for you, Ben, and see what they said. Since then, though, Ben has responded back. He's beat Trails in the Sky FC, and now he's moved on to SC. and is about 15 hours in. And this was about 2 weeks ago now, so perhaps he's beaten it by then. I'm not sure yet, so we'll see. But still, he's finding a phenomenal series, and it's one he wouldn't have discovered if he had not been a listener. Which I love that aspect of this show. And you and I have talked about it many times whenever Keelan opens her mouth about Final Fantasy XIV, for example.
That was not a sound of disgust. That was a sound of me being like, I really want to play it, but I'm too smart to.
There's the passion of so many people that come on to talk about the games on the podcast and just the reviews on the site in general. Like, it's hard not to get into them and want to buy them and weep as your wallet unloads. But yeah, Skies of Cold Steel, blah, 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 blah. Too many different things I was thinking about all at once right there. Look at that. My brain just had a train wreck. It was great. The Tales of Cold Steel, Trails in the Sky, or rather the whole Legend of Heroes series. Final Fantasy XIV, like anytime they've spoken to those games, like Caitlin's passion for that just makes me want to dive into that series so bad.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, I think that one of the we do these things every now and then on RPG Fan. We have these little features about so you want to start. I think the ones we have Trails. We have so you want to get into Ys. Is it Ys?
Ys?
Yeah,
I don't know.
Ys?
Yeah, Wise. Let's go with Wise, just because it's fun and it'll make so many people cringe.
Absolutely. So you want to get into Wise, or do you want to get into Atelier? So like these features are pretty cool. I think the latest one was Patrick did Atelier. So you want to start an Atelier game in beginning of April. I was thinking about pitching one to Zach for so you want to get into Yakuza, because it would be a good way to get all my Yakuza out of me, so I stopped talking about it on this podcast.
That would be a good one, actually, yeah, and it's a really dense series.
It is. I was thinking about waiting until Like a Dragon comes out later in the year, though, so it kind of sums up everything for a little while.
So you want to fight people with bicycles. Exactly.
That's basically the overreaching theme of the entire series, just kill people with bikes.
I thought it was the X clan. The clan was in trouble again, or whatever it was.
The Tojo clan is in crisis.
Yes, the Tojo clan is in crisis.
And also, every game changes. Yes, every game changes the future of the Tojo clan forever. Yes, but the way that they change the way they resolve the crisis and change the future forever usually involves hitting someone with a bicycle. Spoiler alert.
I mean, it would change me, that's for sure.
Absolutely. If you want to change my mind, just be a giant person wearing a dragon tattoo walking up to me with a bicycle. I assume that I will probably, say whatever you want me to at that point, really.
Well, yeah, no kidding. Which also, to that matter, someone did comment back on your video review that we put together of the remasters, saying in Yakuza number, the Tojo clan is in crisis.
Yeah, that's basically the game.
It's great. But yeah, that would be a really fun article. Definitely go hard on that then sometime soon.
Yeah, I kind of want to see that comment.
Yes. So yeah, to that fact though, thank you, Ben, for giving us some listener mail. And like I said, I'll follow up with the resident Legend of Heroes fans, see if they have any more tips and tricks beyond stick with it. Let's move along. We'll have some other listener mail peppered through things. For myself, I played a bunch of stuff, which was funny because the last time, I think it was 191, when we did that episode, I really hadn't played like anything, which was fine because we had a huge bunch of people on, so it wasn't a big deal. And then I was all jazzed up for having actually had time to play a bunch of stuff because I played a couple things that we're doing video review for, and I had a game for review. I went back to Link's Awakening and had time for Horizon Zero Dawn and other stuff for the Retro Encounter podcast. I had like just so much, and then I decided actually let's do this special episode instead. So I've been sitting on a whole bunch of things that I've played finally, and while I was on vacation, I went back to Link's Awakening over this past little holiday and beat it up. I did the Switch version of the Link's Awakening because it's so pretty, and we got it for Christmas. And
it's a beautiful game.
Oh, that's a fun game. I mean, you talked about it, we chatted about it, and I said how much it looked good, and I just wanted to play it so badly.
Yeah, I have my review. On there. I think I'm pretty sure I gave it an editor's choice. I think it deserved it because it's a great game.
Yeah, and it was just such a blast. I mean, I dabbled a bit with Link's Awakening on the Game Boy Color back when. I also covered a bit of it when we were doing our This Day in Gaming kind of series that we briefly did for our YouTube channel here at RPG Fan. And it was fun. It held up. I've beaten both the Oracle games, and you can definitely see how Link's Awakening inspired those, and a lot of the same mechanics and the look and feel and dungeon structure and everything is very much grown upon what was established in Link's Awakening. But yeah, this remaster was just such a joy to jump into. It just looks so fun. The world is so vibrant and colorful to play around, and the new soundtrack is fantastic. And yeah, I just loved it. And you feel like those... I find it better with maybe the top-down ones. I think a little more so than, say, any of the 3D ones. You just feel like such a genius when you solve those puzzles.
Yeah. You really do. And I mean, it's funny that they're in the same series, but it's kind of the same thing with Metroid, really. There are, there's Metroid Prime and there's Metroid side-scrollers, and they're technically the same series, and they adopt many of the same mechanics, but the reality is a lot of people gravitate towards one or the other. Do you gravitate towards the overhead kind of classic Zelda?
I've played all of them, I think, aside from the CDI ones. And even then, I've watched my friend play the CDI ones back when. And it's, I don't know, I think there's something to be gotten from both of them. It's, the same argument I would give people when they ask me, like, do you like acting on stage better or do you like acting on film better? Like, there's parts of both that I love. I would never pick one to be better than the other. Because, yeah, like I said, like, the puzzles feel a bit more tangible, I guess. Is that the word I'm looking for? But, like, there's just something about the exploration because you're limited, right? Like, it's so interesting to see how things are developed with limits. Whereas when you see something like Breath of the Wild,
where there are very few
and so much, right? Yeah, exactly. And it almost feels like, yeah, when you get to those puzzle chambers, they do a really good job of still trying to capture that classic puzzle, but sometimes some of them can feel a little half-baked, and just the nature of it when, again, kind of anything goes. But that's also the fun of it, is anything goes. So watching how you can, as a player, or how other players have broken those chambers and bypassed some of the puzzle mechanics just by sheer dumb luck or ingenuity, that's really interesting too, and that's something you cannot really get away with in the classic top-down ones as well. I mean, speedrunners have found hacks and stuff here and there, ways to clip through things, I'm sure. I haven't looked super hard into it. But
speedrunners can do pretty much anything.
Exactly.
Especially Link to the Past is what they can do with that game is magic.
But it's so there's just something to be said about playing within those confines. So it definitely shapes how you view the game. Whereas when I went to like Breath of the Wild or even Ocarina of Time when it first came out, Ocarina of Time again had a lot of limits. So the puzzles in the dungeons were super interesting, being in a 3D space for the first time. But more of those games are bigger on the exploration, I would say, than it so much as the puzzle mechanics and learning how to navigate, because there's so many roadblocks in how you get around the world, and then each new item opens up a new step for you to go in the top-down 2D worlds, where before like a little rock was a roadblock for you. And they kept the same kind of vibe with the 3D Zelda games, but your initial space was so much bigger. You didn't feel as funneled in, so you had to explore a bit to figure out where to go next, whereas it was pretty quick to tell you in any of the top-down 2D ones where you were able to go. I mean, Link to the Past was pretty big in its sprawl, so you could get a little lost here and there, but I find at least with these Game Boy ones, it becomes quite clear. Right, cool, can't cut that down, so I guess I can only go this way. All right, here I go.
Yeah. It's interesting, too, that I think I mentioned this in the review. I haven't read the review for months. That the game on the Switch the island feels much, much, much smaller on the Switch version than it did on the Game Boy. Because with the Game Boy, it had the classic single screen scroll, like Link goes to the side of the screen scrolls over. And for some reason, that little pause between screens seemed to make the world and the island feel a little bit bigger. Whereas with this game, it's, smooth screen. You just walk everywhere on the island. There's no screen scrolling. And it makes it feel a little bit smaller, I think.
I would agree with that, actually. I found that rather interesting because that's not to do it a disservice because it is still a very big play space and it feels big in its way, but I also found myself shocked sometimes how quickly I got from point A to point B, especially once I was able to navigate pretty much everywhere. Yeah. Because, it's so seamless and they don't have that perception of breaking it up, so to speak. I'm curious if it was like 1-to-1.
Occasionally, occasionally they do have that, and that's because of the slowdown.
Yes, which because we didn't take the full Switch dock with us because we didn't want to take up Grandma and Grandpa's TV. Grandpa likes to watch his NASCAR, and we don't want to get in the way of that. So I was playing it almost exclusively in handheld, and yeah, there's definitely a lot of clunkiness at points in that game. Unfortunately, it's not as well optimized as I would think it should be for handheld mode, but I know that was something you were hoping would get patched, but no, it hasn't been. So it's still a little clunky here and there.
That's just.
But it has a second. Once it kind of gets revved up, it goes, and then usually when you transition to another area, sometimes there's a bit of a moment. But when it went to 60 frames per second, it was beautiful and butter smooth, and it was everything I wanted from that. How it presented at E3 to playing it was just. It's such a magical take on it with this new graphic style, and I would love to see them bring back the Oracle series in this. It'd be so great.
Well, hopefully we'll find out by the end of July. Nintendo has a couple of big announcements, I believe, don't they? They're teasing it, or there's always rumors that there's going to be another Direct at some point.
Well, exactly, and we've gotten pretty much everything from almost every major developer that kind of missed out on E3 with this cavalcade of news that we got over this last month, which we still have to address on my end of things and with the video team. But it's there was a lot, but we haven't really had like the big E3 Nintendo Direct yet. We got that one where they talked about the Origami King and Bakugan.
What's that? I don't know what that is. That was the most anticlimactic reveal I've ever seen in a thing. It was hysterically funny.
At least WayForward's got more work.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, the fact that it was WayForward too, I'm like, ooh boy, maybe they got a Nintendo property. Maybe it's like WayForward's doing a Metroid or something. Like in my dream reality, WayForward's doing a side-scrolling Metroid Zelda game. And nope. No, that's not what we got at all.
Apparently people still play Bakugan.
Not judging by Twitter.
Though we'll reinvigorate the series. I don't know. At any rate, the Link's Awakening is it's pretty magical. So it was I don't know, and it's fun too because as much as the slowdown was a thing, playing it in handheld did feel like the right way to do it, and I guess it's just because it was naturally a handheld game to start with. But it looks good on the big TV too. But it was just with the little chunky like claymation almost kind of style of it all, and it just felt right to be playing it in that handheld. And it's so clear, like I can see everything. I figured everything out, except when I was playing in low light. I got stuck in what's his face's castle, the prince. What's his name?
The Frog Prince.
Yeah, I got stuck in his castle at one point. I couldn't figure out where to go, and because I was playing at night, and it was asleep beside me, and I'm just sitting there with the screen like on the lowest brightness, and it was just slightly too dark that I couldn't make out like one of like the side passageways. Couldn't tell it wasn't a wall, so it wasn't until I played the next day with like the brightness up. I was like, oh duh, okay. And I had that happen a couple times when I was playing it on low light, but I had to kind of crank it up a little bit and risk burning my retinas, I guess. But I got through.
Did you get stuck anywhere else?
Pardon?
Did you get stuck anywhere else?
I did. I usually pride myself on Zelda games by not looking up guides, and I'm almost always good about it, but I got really stuck in that final Shadow Boss battle. Again, probably because I was playing at like 2 a.m., and my brain wasn't fully firing, but I was just really eager to get through the Windfish dungeon. And I couldn't figure out how to beat the Shadow Ganon character for some reason. I was like shooting everything I had at him, and just couldn't figure it out until I was like, oh, I have to use this attack. Right, I forgot that my sword can do things. And that was really what it was down to. I was just thinking it had to be some gimmick with an item, and I just couldn't get to the bottom of it like an idiot. And then I looked it up and was like, I'm dumb. Good job, me. Anyways, so try it all, everybody. That's my recommendation. I won't spoil it for you, but try everything, even your sword stuff. I find you use like there's certain abilities you just don't use as much, and it's easy to forget about them.
Yep.
Either way, it was satisfying to beat it. It's a pretty cool game.
Yeah, I very much enjoyed it.
I did it. I even did the color dungeon. I went red.
I can't remember what I did. Oh, did you do any of the dungeon editor?
Oh, I did actually. I did one. Yeah, I did that so far in the post game. It's pretty cool. I want to go back and do some more. I set it aside because again we just had a bunch of family visit and stuff happening, and there was a fishing tournament on Animal Crossing, so had to do that. Absolutely. But it's neat. I do like how it shapes up, and because I didn't touch it until the very end of the game, I had like everything available to me, so it's kind of fun to play around with, pick and choose different things and make a neat little dungeon. So I'm excited to build a couple of those, and I'll challenge Gwen to them, see how she does.
It's interesting. I found that not the puzzle dungeons. I found that the dungeon editor was sort of promoted as basically like a Mario Maker style thing for Zelda. And I didn't feel like it was that, because, I mean, you couldn't really set a theme for a dungeon. It didn't really have central mechanics, that kind of thing. What I thought it more was it was more like a puzzle. It was more like a puzzle game where you have to create the dungeon using these very specific criteria. Which was an interesting approach to it.
Yeah, I see that. And I can see how this could be like a precursor to a Legend of Zelda Maker. If they do give you that, like, you place the room and then you can choose where to put chests, what to put in the chests, what enemies to populate it with, like all that sort of stuff. Like, this is definitely a good place to start. But yeah, it has like no customizability. It's just you drop something and what's in it's in it. You just get to choose where it goes from there and in what order you get things, which I'm so dumb. I did my first like trial one just for fun, and I had set like just outside the what do they call the bosses in that one? The nightmare room?
Yeah, nightmares.
I had set, there was a chest in that room just before you went in, which by logic, if I had gotten every other chest, the very last chest you unlock in your puzzle dungeons is the key to the nightmare. And I got all the way to that chamber, and then I opened it and I was like, 1 rupee, what the heck? I'm an idiot. There's like one chamber that I had placed that went no, it was just like into that chamber and then back into the entrance hall. That was just to the left of the main entrance. So I stupidly had to go like all the way back to the very start to get this one key because I'm an idiot and forgot my own layout of my own darn dungeon I made. It's funny.
That is too bad. It's funny though. I mean,
womp womp.
Womp womp. I mean, Zelda makers sort of exist, along with like Mario Maker was Nintendo's take on, I think it was called Lunar Magic, was a Super Mario World creator. And, basically a lot of the same things. You create your own hacked version of Mario. And I think there was one called Zelda Classic for, I think it's just PC. And it does the same thing. Like, it's originally Zelda Classic was a full-out remake of the original Legend of Zelda for NES, with like almost looking like identical assets. It was essentially a clone version of it. But they opened the engine and, to fans and everything. And I guess there's like hundreds upon hundreds of Zelda games. Some of them are terrible, of course, but some of them are of extraordinarily good quality. And I remember playing a few years ago, and they're very good. So I mean,
that's what they always wanted to do. There was on that the disc drive. There, at least I think they had it at least in Japan. We never got it overseas, but on the Nintendo disc drive there was like a Legend of Zelda editor map maker thing that I think was always like something they wanted. They wanted to make it so people could go and explore and do their thing. Just we never got it. Yeah,
we really skipped out on the whole disc drive thing. It's kind of a shame. The Famicom got a disc drive, and the Nintendo 64 sort of got a disc drive, and we missed out on all that.
But that would have been cool, even back in Nintendo days, if we'd gotten like a whole Legend of Zelda creator. Would have been super dope.
Yeah, I think it's very interesting the way, video game history is fascinating, but when you look at how the Famicom worked versus how the Nintendo Entertainment System worked, there was, you'd walk in with essentially a floppy disk into a store, and you'd put the game on your floppy disk, and that's how you did it. For a while, there were no game cards.
Yeah, it's bizarre, but that's where you gotta start, right? And didn't also that one had like the Nintendo TV or like the satellite TV thing or whatever? I feel like that gave access to certain stuff too.
I can't remember whether or not satellite TV happened for Super Nintendo, or if it was also, for the Super Famicom, or if it was for Famicom as well.
I'm forgetting now. I remember I watched a video on it and it was really interesting, but that was like 2 years ago now. I can't remember. I'm sure someone can clarify this for me. Send me an email. Tell me about it.
Yeah, check out, I think on YouTube, Video Game Historian has a good video on it, I think.
And that's probably the one I actually watched.
Yeah, I think he does. He does very, very good work. I know that there was one for the Super Nintendo, because they had the quasi sequel to Link to the Past, where over the years,
yes, that's right.
Yeah, a ROM got released of it, but because it was lacking the announcer, it didn't really work all that well, and eventually, fans hacked it, and so it was actually a playable version of the game, which I think is,
maybe that's the one I'm thinking of then.
Yeah,
and I think you had to download it through the random online service or something.
Yeah, Nintendo really did have a bit of in terms of the internet, in terms of I think there was online banking on the NES originally. I think like they really were ahead of the curve on that in Japan, and it just never really happened in the West.
And then for some reason they just never bothered to innovate their online capabilities.
I don't understand either. I mean,
I'm kidding.
You're kidding, but what's the old phrase? You're kidding.
It's not that bad, but
I think it was you're kidding on the square. It's like I'm kidding, but I'm serious.
Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm. Yeah. At any rate, if you haven't played Link's Awakening and you have a Switch, probably should go do those things, unless you just hate Zelda games, which some people do.
Mm-hmm.
That's your choice. You can be wrong. No, it's such a whimsical, delightful, fun experience. Yep. And I loved it.
And it holds up.
Start to finish. I'm glad I finally played it.
Yeah, it holds up. It's still a great game.
And nothing beats being able to carry Marin over your head.
Nope, that is the dream.
And her calling you a bad boy when you break pots in front of her. It's super funny.
She's a very good character. She is some of the most personality of a Zelda character in the series, and that's saying something because there aren't a whole lot of voice lines in this game, but they really do. They use what they have to great effect.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. And I think that's why that game has stuck with players for so long. Just from the nature of the world, and also, again, just how poignant some of those moments are, and how self-aware, I guess it is, in a sense.
Yeah, it's different.
Those final moments, gets you.
It's different. That's what I think that people like about it. There are certain Zelda games that give you something a little bit different, a different spin on it, are nice. I mean, I think that's one of the reasons why Breath of the Wild was so successful, not just because it's a brilliantly designed game, but also because, it's you've lost at the beginning of that game. You're done. Like, the party's over and you lost. And then the game is sort of about rebuilding yourself and coming back from that, which is different from most Zelda games, which is the usual, dungeon, dark world, more dungeons, fight Ganon, you're done. And this game is very similar. It departs from that for one of the first times in the series history.
Yeah, it's just magical.
Yeah.
I'm glad I took part in that piece of history, even in the remake.
Absolutely.
It stays pretty true to it. I mean, I don't know. I haven't gone back to really look at what was better or not, what was improved upon. I'm sure some of the hit detection and stuff like that was a bit better, but overall, I'm not sure if one is easier than the other. I don't know.
I'll tell you what, the only thing that it's funny, when I reviewed it, I thought, okay, I've got to go back, and my partner, she happens to have a Game Boy Color, and she happens to have Link's Awakening DX sitting in it. So immediately after I finished the Switch version, I was like, all right, let's play. And I sat back down again, and it was in one of the final dungeons. And I walked away tremendously impressed by it, because it was such a faithful recreation of the Switch. The thing that really made a difference, though, were the extra buttons. And having dedicated sword buttons, so you didn't have to switch your sword out of either A or B.
Make a big difference.
Yeah, it made that a lot easier, and I didn't make it easier in the way that it was just a nice quality of life thing, that just having extra buttons gave you that freedom.
It saves you time. It's just less clunky.
Yeah.
It's really the only difference, but I don't think it makes the game easier.
No, I don't think it does either.
It's maybe just that split second of going like, I don't have to actually think about going in and switching items. I just have it.
Yeah, exactly. I think there's a big difference between difficulty and just making things simpler.
Yeah, exactly. But that being said, moving along, we've got more listener mail. We've got one, which I remember telling you about this a couple weeks ago when we were talking about planning this episode out. We got one from a Norwegian listener.
Yeah, this is cool.
Which was, our Norwegian listener is coming all the way from Norway, of course. But his name is Per. There we go. That's what I was trying to get to. His name is Per. Which he was very clear about saying it's pronounced like the fruit pear. So I appreciate you, because, it looks like per, so I wasn't sure. But he also goes by the Hillbilly Gamer.
Which we can pronounce.
He's a Norway hillbilly. It's great. He was saying how he's been listening to Random Encounter for a while, and he started getting into Retro Encounter as well. And because he's a huge game collector and a big RPG fan, our podcast has been one of those podcasts that has helped him kind of discover new games, and the website itself, he's been reading rpgfan.com for a while and keeping track of new discoveries for him to add to his collection. So he said he started playing pen and paper RPGs until finally he did Ys on the Sega Master System, and then was basically hooked on RPGs. So sounds like a good entry point. I have yet to play an Ys. I really should. So he was nice enough to buy me one for Christmas, and I really need to go dive into that.
I hear we have a feature on RPG Fan to help you get into it.
Do we? Who wrote that?
So you want to play Ys.
And that one was by...
I think it was by Fenner?
I think that was Robert Fenner. Yep.
Yeah.
That sounds right. And yeah, so I am going to be looking into that very soon as I stop doing so many other things. Anyways, so yeah, he's been loving the podcast, stumbled on the webpage, and has been using it to hunt for RPGs for his collection that he throws onto a Retron 5. And he also likes the fact that we play quite a few Japanese-only reviews, because back we had some folks who were able to do that, at least from the retro collection of stuff. So he's got a few Japanese-only games with translations patches too that he's able to access. So he loves that we cover those as well, so he knows if he's getting into something good or not. Either way, he wanted to chime in on our discussion that we had on 190. I think it was 190. I don't think it was 191. We had too many people on 191. I think it was 190. We talked about
just you, me, and Alana.
Mobile games. Yeah, we were talking about mobile games, and he was saying that he's a grumpy old dude and has a hard time buying games when he can't get them in a physical format. Which we just had a chat about that, didn't we, on our Slack channel, where people are talking about how they prefer physical over download only. I don't know, for myself, since we got the Switch, I've been exclusively download only. I don't want more things.
I'm a digital guy too.
Yeah, and I appreciate, there's that whole digital rights thing, and what happens if that runs out? Where does your tangible proof of your purchase, it's a hard thing to hang on to, although we all have, ideally we have a whole purchase history, so we should be able to go hey, when this comes back up, I want my copy back. I imagine that can be fought, but it hasn't been a thing except for, I think, Scott Pilgrim.
It's so sad.
Yeah, so that's a thing. But at any rate, it's a weird thing. I get it. But so with mobile games, he has a big problem with that because they're all just digital only. But at the same time, it's hard for him when he's got his two sons and he works a lot and his sons play video games a lot and he doesn't have a ton of income. So having mobile games be a lot more affordable seems like a natural way to go, but there's just so few of them that he felt that were big, solid RPG experiences, because a lot of them are so gacha. Like right now he says he's playing Shin Megami Tensei DX2 and Pokemon Go are basically the only two phone games he plays because he just loves the two IPs a lot. But yeah, he's having a hard time staying engaged with them in general. So I was giving him some feedback based on our conversation we had about Final Fantasy Tactics, War of the Visions, because it's basically, as I just said, it's basically as a Final Fantasy Tactics, or it's Final Fantasy Brave Exvius, War of the Visions. There we go.
Yeah, that's it.
But it feels basically like a full Final Fantasy Tactics game. You don't have to participate in any of the gacha stuff if you don't want to, and you have a fully fleshed out story that's also on par with Dragalia Lost, which I had spoken about as well, that it's a commitment. If you want to play Dragalia Lost, it's a full RPG. Fully voiced story sequences that Stephen Meyerink, formerly of the staff, works quite heavily on. It's a very involved game. So those two were big ones. And then I talked about the Cat in Time and Space was another one, because it just feels like playing a Chrono Trigger game, just with a few little gacha elements. But the gacha stuff is so meager that you could get through the whole experience if you wanted. You just might miss out on some personal quests and stuff. So yeah, there's some stuff out there. So either way.
Yeah, Final Fantasy Dimensions, I think, is a...
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah, you brought that one up.
Dimensions is great. It's
pretty cheap to buy the full game, right?
I think it's something like 20. It's not super cheap. It's not like a $5 game, but it's not super expensive. And if you want...
It also goes on special now and again.
Yeah, if you want, you have the original Tactics on there as well. A lot of...
Yep, and when they it goes on special. The Square Enix titles all go on special. Same with Dragon Quest 1 through 8 are on mobile now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. They it's a pretty good retro platform in a lot of ways. And in other ways, they create their own versions. Final Fantasy 5 and 6, of course.
Yes, and your mileage may vary with touchscreen.
Yeah, but on
gamepad controls.
Yes, but the new iOS, I think it's been for the last year, and the new one I think is going even further, are very compatible with Xbox One controllers. You can pair an Xbox One controller to your...
That's right, actually, I did hear that.
Yeah, to your phone or to your... And you could always do that with Android, but you can do it to your iPad as well, and it makes for a pretty good system to carry around with as a portable system. All you need is a controller and your iPad, and you're all set.
Yeah, no kidding. So, yeah, there's one solution for you pair as well. And then, although he's hoping that just a lot of stuff gets ported over to the Switch, but we'll see. I mean, the Switch isn't a terrible place for, I guess, mobile platforms, but I don't know if I want all the gacha elements on there. It just seems like you would need a dedicated internet thing for most of that stuff, so it could be tricky. At any rate, he was just saying he has no one really to talk about with gaming in his life, so listening to the podcast and hearing us chit-chat, we fill that in for him. So he says thank you, and yeah, thank you for letting us know that. That's awesome.
That's really great.
Be that for you.
Yeah. What was it? What did they call you? I'm just thinking. What did they call you in the last one? Greg and the.
Oh, Greg and you. I guess the collection of guests, the Runaway Five.
Greg and the Runaway Five. I don't know why I just have in my head now. It's Pear and the Retron 5. It's
yeah, exactly.
Pear and the Retron 5. It sounds like a really really fun like late 70s sci-fi show.
It's he would have it would be a robot. It'd be his robot partner.
Yeah.
And they fight crimes.
Okay, we got to say Doc Pear and the Retron 5.
Yes, there you go. We've got it. That's it. Let's package that and deliver it. But at any rate, so yeah, as we are rambling right now, he was accusing himself of rambling. But no, this is great. Thank you so much for the feedback and getting into things. He was asking if we had an episode on the Atelier game, and I went looking, and we haven't actually. I don't think Retro has either yet.
No, but there is you want to get into Atelier article out there.
I may have responded with. I can't remember now, but yeah, that was written by Pat Gann.
Yeah, we are really hitting that feature over the head this week, and I love it.
Yeah, right. So yeah, there's a lot of good features for these folks who want to do these deep dives. We're on it here at RPG Fans, so Pear, go give it a read. But yeah, thank you for loving the site, the podcasts. We will keep it up. Scandinavian point of views are welcome, and you can always share them with us. So thank you for the much love. Again, that was sent back at around the beginning of June. Since then, he did get back to me at the beginning of July, which would have been on Gwen's birthday, actually. And so he's going to check out those games. He said he's tried the Brave Exvius game, and he said he does like the story mode so far, and he grew up with the Final Fantasy series, so he's hoping he'll get it. And while he respects that the Final Fantasy and loves the Final Fantasy series, he feels it's fallen off so badly over the years. So, yeah, that did happen, but they've rebuilt, I feel.
There's an argument to be made both ways on that.
Well, exactly. And he hasn't even bought or has planned to buy the Final Fantasy VII Remake yet, so, yeah. And he feels he needs to run and hide from the RPG fan crew now, because he said that out loud.
It's okay. I haven't played it yet either. I'm waiting for the PC version.
Yeah, and I haven't gotten to it just because time and money, because I need to get a job again. But I still really want to dive into that version, because everyone on the team has spoken so highly of it, so I think you'd be in good hands with that one, Pear. It seems like, in my opinion, Square Enix has been doing a good job at writing the Final Fantasy ship. We'll see what happens when 16 comes around, but they've been making some good headway, I feel, and 14 has been leading a lot of that, and I think that's a good bar for them to hold themselves to, and if other games in the series can meet that, I think they'll be okay. But a lot of the remakes and everything have been great.
Absolutely, and if you're looking for some classic Final Fantasy style games, I mean, we talked about the Bravely series quite a bit on this show a few weeks ago. Bravely 2's coming out theoretically before the end of the year. Bravely Default 2, that'd be that's going to be good. I know you have mobile, so I think that the prequel to Octopath Traveler is coming out pretty soon for mobile. And that might be an interesting place to look at.
That'd be a good one for you for sure. Yeah. So anyways, carrying on with Pear, he's going to now, as everyone seems to want to get into deep dives, he's looking into getting into the Persona games.
Ooh, that is a deep dive.
Yeah, exactly. And as he had said, just like me, he's a father who doesn't have a ton of time to play the game, so he got into the, SMT. I'm blanking on what SMT stands for now. Shin Megami Tensei, there we go.
Yeah.
About 10 years ago, and for some reason he's like, I had a weird view that Persona was not a real thing, and oh how wrong I was. So he's like, I'm a purist, but he's like, I'm not going to pay the insane price for Persona 1 on eBay. So, but he also has a hard time playing games if you can't play them in the right order, so he has 2 and 3 and 4, but he's like, I still need to find the first game, so I hope that gets ported for you before you dive into it, or you can find something at a reasonable price, do some bin diving, I don't know.
I'm a little surprised that it's not available on on any other platforms.
Maybe it was Vita? I don't know if it ever got ported. I'm not sure. But I mean, they did just port Persona 4 Golden, so I'm wondering if the Atlas is going to start going back and throwing everything on Steam now.
Persona 1 Revelations? I never played this is not a series that I'm into, possibly because we don't have a feature on RPG Fan talking about how to get into the Persona series yet.
But someone should do that, maybe. I don't know.
It's $1 million idea. The original Persona was on PlayStation, PlayStation Portable, and it looks like there is a Windows version available. I sincerely doubt it came out in 1996, so you might need to be able to get a copy of Windows 98 in order to play it. But I don't know.
GOG. Come on, GOG. Pick that up.
Yeah.
At any rate, he has said, though, he goes on to say he's breaking the mold and he's actually going to start with Persona 4. And he has gotten into it a bit, and then he's going to get 1 and 2, or he has 1 and 2 in Japanese. So we'll see how he does. But yeah, he's listening to our podcast, and he's listening a lot to Retro Encounter, so Solosi, you keep him coming. And yeah, he's liking the talk every day. So he looks forward to our next episodes, which is this one, and we're talking about you. And he also urges everyone to stay safe in these times, since all of us all over Europe are thinking of us and living so close to the American border and Trump. Yep. Yeah, it's not great all the time, as we talked about at the beginning of the episode.
Yeah, let's, yeah. The border's closed for now, so.
Exactly. Either way, Per, thank you so much for once again being our resident hillbilly from Norway. We appreciate your feedback and getting some international listenership in there.
Yeah. I hear we're huge in Europe.
Apparently.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny because you were saying you actually got some analytics from Salvato about where we're big.
Oh, yeah. We have, well, in Canada, we have, apparently our listenership is in Ontario and BC. So that's Greg and I, probably.
Yeah, just
the two of us. And yep, apparently we have some listenership in Nova Scotia, which is probably me on vacation, visiting my parents.
So, we're doing good.
Yeah, we're doing great.
And we have like an East-West rivalry, apparently, with Retro Encounter.
Yeah.
I think Random owns the East and Retro owns the West, allegedly.
Yeah, that seems to be the way it's broken down. So it's an East Coast, West Coast sort of situation.
Yeah, we need to have some sort of T-shirt, kind of like West is best and Beasts of the East kind of thing going on, or something like that we can ship out to our fans and create a big epic rivalry between the two podcasts.
Oh, I like it. We just need, it's between the two of us, though. I think we need like someone in the middle, like another podcast of some kind.
Yeah, like something that people want to listen to about music.
Yeah, that would be great. They could be perfect for middle America, really.
Yeah, the middle of North America needs something, apparently, because we're not doing it.
Nope.
But keep giving us feedback. We like to hear it from all corners of the world, and that's really funny that that Solosi's cornered the West. What am I doing wrong? My West Coasters, come on. No. Either way, more games. We talked about more games. Link's Awakening had some issues when it comes to slowdown on the Switch, but CrossCode got ported up, and on July 9th that came out, and you've been playing it, and you said it's not holding up as great.
Actually, it's pretty funny because we were a lot of the issues that we're talking about with Link's Awakening also apply to CrossCode for the Switch. CrossCode's a game that I've wanted to play for years, but I've just not really done it because it's been in early access for so long. I think it's been in early access since 2015, and then it was released last year in its full form. And I believe Alana reviewed it, and hang on. Yeah, she gave it an 85, so she really enjoyed it. And it was coming out for Switch, so I was like, oh yeah, sure, I'll play it. And I have to admit, I'm really enjoying it. I really, really like it. It reminds me a lot of a very late period SNES game, which is what they're going for in terms of the mechanics. It almost reminds me of a cross between Secret of Mana and Legend of Zelda. When you're in the world itself, like the overworld, wandering around, it's one big world. There's no like airships or anything like that. You can instantly teleport between various places, but you can walk from one end of the world to the other. And in that way, it reminds me a little bit of Secret of Mana. And then when you go into the dungeons in this game, they are like Legend of Zelda dungeons on steroids. There are fights in them, and everything ends with a boss battle. And the boss battle is usually sort of a puzzle type of boss, kind of like in Zelda as well, where there's a mechanic you need to figure out to be able to beat the boss. But for the most part, the temples are just puzzles, and you use your spheromancer powers, where you shoot spheres, and you can charge them with various elements.
It sounds like so made up. Like someone just asked the person, like, so what can you do? Throw spheres? I'm a spheromancer. Yep, it's a real thing. Look it up.
That's sort of the entire game, though. It's the game. The concept of the game. It's really, really, really clever. It's a game that takes place in an MMO. The game itself is not an MMO. It's a classic single player action RPG. But
it's like dot hack kind of thing.
Yeah, but the game itself takes place in an MMO, and they have gone to extreme lengths to create a very authentic MMO experience within the game. And your main character is a silent protagonist, and the reason why they're a silent protagonist is because their voice chat is broken, so they can't speak. They can't speak to anyone. Fine. So eventually they get like pre-programmed words that they can say. So the only words they can say is Leah, hi, bye, sorry. So, or I guess sorry.
Like they're using like the canned gestures.
Yeah, exactly. So like everyone else in the game can talk, and like they'll ask her like a complex question, and she'll be like, sorry, and shrug, because they can't speak. And which is, it's very, very clever. The game itself is tremendously clever. The puzzles are fiendish. They're so friggin' hard and just brain busters in places. Some of them are easy. Some of them you walk in and you get it like that. And there are other ones that I was playing for like 15 minutes, maybe more, trying to figure out these puzzles. The different elements behave differently depending on which where you are and which tools you have to interact with. And some are more logical than others. Like for me, electricity and magnets tends to come very easy to me. The wave element is a little bit trickier, which like can teleport you around the room. Yeah, and like with these 4 elements, every enemy in the game has weaknesses and resistances to these elements. So you need to be able to figure out which element to use on which enemy. To be able to beat them, because the game does have a fairly, if you're not leveled up and you do not have the appropriate equipment, the game is rather difficult. I have to admit, I always find it challenging. Like the enemies don't scale up with you, but it's a very challenging game, and you can get overwhelmed easily by enemies, lots of them on the screen at the same time. And enemies, there are very few enemies that you can just whack to kill. Each one has its own specific mechanic, weakness. You need to break their guard in order to actually inflict a lot of damage on them. So it's not the kind of game you can just mindlessly run around whacking people, at least not in like the later areas. Now,
I like when the games challenge you like that, so they don't just let you get into a simple, just hit everything rhythm and hope for the best.
Exactly. Now, my big problem with it is something we were talking about Legend of Zelda with, and that is the slowdown and frame rate issues. It is playable. It's very, very playable. I'm having a good time playing it, but when you are on a very large screen, like one of the towns, and there's a lot of sprites running around, and there's a lot happening on the screen, there are frame rate issues, and there is quite a bit of slowdown. Especially when there are particle effects. Like if I'm in a dungeon and I'm surrounded by like various enemies and I hit them with one of the most powerful spells I've got, which creates lots of sparks, the game will slow down. Like it's a Mega Man game on NES and there's too many sprites on the screen. Like it will literally go into slow motion. And I mean, I don't think that's intentional. I guess they might be trying to call back to what it's actually like to play a Super Nintendo game, but I don't think so. And there are a few other problems with it that are just strange. Like there's a delay in the menu. So if you go into the menu and you want to check your items, you equip your guy, you want to check out the circuit board, which is how you pick the skills that you want in the game. When you hit it, there's like a second delay between hitting the button and then going to the screen. So you'll be like, hit, next screen. And it's a minor little delay, but
weird.
Yeah, that kind of thing really does get you eventually, because
it's going to add up. Yeah,
I guess we just expect things to happen instantaneously when we hit a button nowadays. And I have been able to. There is a reliable bug where I can crash the game if I go into the encyclopedia section and I try to look up plants in Autumn's Fall, I think. If I try to do that, my game will crash every single time. I've tried restarting the game.
That's not great.
Yeah, I've tried turning the system off and on again. No, there's no information in there I really need. I was just curious because there's a surprising amount of lore in the game, basically based around the idea that it's set in an MMO. They've created an entire world and lore and a history, and it's very, very clever. But I was trying to get in there, and it was really, really slowing down, and then it started slowing down to the point where the game crashed. So that was disappointing. I'm really hoping that they come out with a patch in the near future, because otherwise the game, I mean, it looks amazing. It looks amazing on handheld mode too. I like playing games. Like I have my television set, and I love playing games on my TV. But every now and then, Amanda will be in the living room, and I'll be like, okay, I'll just pick this up and head outside to the balcony or something like that, or the room, and play it on a handheld mode. And this game plays very, very well in handheld. If you're looking for a portable version of CrossCode, I mean, this is the game you want. It works. It works beautifully. I'm trying to think of some other things that have been. There is one thing in this game that is. It's not bothering me, but it is something that I feel hurts it slightly. Because it's set in an MMO, and like all of the characters in the game are, avatars. They're players. There is a lot of the time, the vast majority of time, there is a real lack of danger and stakes in the game. There are points in the game where like real world things and like the overreaching, the other plot, the plot that's actually happening to your main character, and like the mystery of why she can't talk properly, and like there is that mystery too. And in that part of the game, there are stakes and there is actual danger, and that's very compelling. Right. But when you're just in the world as it is, and you're going through the dungeons, and you're following the track, as it's called in the game, there's really no sense of actual danger, because if you die in-game, you respawn immediately to the other side of the screen, and, that's... So there's really no danger just playing it, and there's also no danger to the quote-unquote characters in the game, because they know if they die, they're just going to respawn immediately after.
Right, so yeah, there's not really a lot of punishment, even like... And I guess failing the puzzles or whatever in the dungeons themselves doesn't really hold you back, so to speak, aside from just taking longer to get through it.
Yeah. There is a really funny mechanic, though, where whenever you enter a dungeon, you're often entering with your friends, because you'll form a party together. But when you go into a dungeon, all dungeons are instanced. So if you go in, you're by yourself, as an MMO mechanic. But to like incorporate the idea, if you go into a dungeon, you end up in a race with your other characters. So depending on how fast you finish the dungeon, you might end up first, second, or third. I think I've lost.
Okay, so there are some stakes to the puzzles, and that's cool.
I don't think you get anything out of it. Like you don't get any items for winning the races. Oh. I think you might get achievements, but that's pretty much the only thing you get. I mean, I'm on Switch anyway, so that's not really a big thing. It's just it's one of those little ways that the world, it makes you feel like the world is actually living, like these people are, like the people you're playing with are actually people, not just characters, like on the other side of their computer playing the game. And that's very, very clever. But yeah, I like that. The stakes for the most part, because the majority of the game, up until the end anyway, you are just playing the MMO as you normally would. You're doing side quests, which, a lot of fetch quests in the great MMO tradition. And because of that, I feel like the stakes are fairly low, because everyone's in there just to have fun and have a good time. And technically so are you. Like, you're building friendships with these characters, and you're getting to know them better and getting to know their struggles. But they're all playing it for fun. They're playing it because it's an MMO. And because of that, the stakes do tend to be low for the most of the game. And I'm not really too absorbed by the plot of the MMO, because that's kind of that's the background noise. That's the background story. That's just the world I'm in, but it's not the story that's being told about me. It's just kind of there. Now, I'm coming down hard on this game for the frame rate issues and the, lack of story. That being said, it's really delightful. It's a really well put together game. There are so many items and possibilities and puzzles that are just brilliantly put together. Every single screen is a puzzle in the sense that every screen is made up of different levels. So there's like ground level, there's one above that, there's one above that, there's one above that. So there's hills. And you can parkour around these areas as long as you are on the right level. You can jump between two platforms. So as long as you're on the same platform, on the same level, you can jump between platforms. And by doing this, you can find items in every single place. So it's a good place to explore. It's a great game to explore the world and to just have some fun. I'm going to recommend it. I think that there are a lot of missed opportunities in it, but I don't think that those are deal breakers for the game whatsoever. I mean, it's an indie game, technically, and in terms of an indie game, it has a scope. It's a massive game. Like, I was expecting to plow through this thing in, like, I don't know, 15 hours, and, like, I'm very much into, like, the 40-plus hour mark now. I'm getting to the end, but there's a lot of game here, so you're getting a lot for your money when you purchase this thing.
And is it all earned? Like, it's not padding?
No, I don't think it's a lot of padding. I mean, I find the story to be very intriguing, the actual story to be very intriguing. And there are, like I said, fetch quests, but I think all the fetch quests in many ways are almost part of the world. There's a lot of mini games in it throughout too. Like, I found a tower defense game in places. One of which is just kicking my butt. I cannot beat it. And you get quests. So it's the usual, like, you walk up to a character and there's a question mark or an exclamation point above their head, and you talk to them and they give you a quest that you can accept or deny. So it does feel like an MMO. I mean, Greg, I mean, if you're looking for a game that is super fun, and actually it might be a little hard for Gwen, but I mean, in terms of its look and its nature and everything, I think it would be a decent game.
If it's got like the Zelda kind of puzzles and kind of structure, it's definitely my wheelhouse.
Yeah, the puzzles are harder than Zelda are. Like, some of them, you know, in Zelda, there's usually one puzzle in every single dungeon that's like the real head scratcher. Like, yep. Oh, what do I do with these balls and these pillars? Yeah. But it's like almost every single room in CrossCode is a head scratcher of a puzzle.
Okay, I dig that. I'm into that.
I think you would. I think it's a game worth playing. I really do.
It's been on my radar. It looks like it, from its appeal in its visuals, and the gameplay style has been in my wheelhouse for a while and on my list of things to get. So it's just been a matter of when, and I'm glad to know that I should dodge it on the Switch.
I don't think you should get it on the Switch. I think you should get it on PC.
I could do that.
Yeah, and who knows? Like, I'm obviously, next episode I might give you an update and say, hey, you can get it on the Switch now because they patched it and it's running great. But considering Nintendo hasn't patched Link's Awakening yet, it might just be a limitation of the system.
Yeah.
I mean, I love my Switch. I adore my Switch, but I'm a little bit worried what's going to happen when the PS5 and the Xbox Series X comes out. Because I know Nintendo isn't playing the same game as them, but there still is competition between the three systems and the three big companies. And, like, their current gen systems are kicking the crap out of the Switch. When the PS5 comes along, the Switch is going to look just archaic, except for the fact you can take it everywhere.
Yeah, that's why I'm curious how and when Nintendo plans on innovating next, but I don't know. I get where you're coming from, but I think they're still okay for a bit, because there's a certain part of the market they have cornered for sure.
Oh, I agree. I don't think that Nintendo's in trouble as of now, but Nintendo Nintendo never innovates on... they innovate on mechanics. They don't tend to innovate on hardware. Like, the hardware, obviously, impacts the mechanics. So for the Wii, of course, it was motion controls. For the Wii U, it was the touchscreen. For the Switch, it's the portability and the fact that, you know, it's a console and it's also a handheld. And I mean, I have no idea where they're going to take it next, but I think it is a little bit disappointing that Nintendo really has thrown up their hands and say, we're not playing this game. We're not going to be going for the latest in technology or the fastest processors or SSDs or graphics. I think
they just want you to have fun.
They just want you to have fun, and I think that that's a strength and a weakness. I do wish, in my heart of hearts, that they would try just a little bit harder on their next system to make sure it is at least running up to current gen, rather than hanging back a little ways. And And I mean, a perfect example of this, what we were talking about in the a bunch of people in a ball pit episode, where was it? Tucker was talking about the Outer Worlds on Switch, and it's like, wow, they ported the Outer Worlds to Switch, and it looks terrible. Like it's playing okay, and like everything's there, but it looks really, really bad, and I don't think that is necessary anymore, because like what my iPad can do, which is not considerably larger than my Switch, is graphically speaking, it leaves the Switch in the dust. Heck, my phone, I have an iPhone 8, and like it can still pull off graphics that, and without any slowdown or hiccups, that I don't think the Switch could really pull off. I think Nintendo really does need to innovate in their next generation, unless they really want to be left behind in the dust. The mechanics are fantastic, and obviously that's why the Switch is excelling, is because of its unique form factor and what it offers.
And I would argue that the price point helps too.
I would argue the price
part of why they keep it down as well.
I would argue it does, but I mean, like if you're looking at what else is happening in the market right now, with Apple, Apple's going to be introducing ARM chips in all of their laptops, and they've been using ARM chips in their iPad and phones for years now, and like they are, super efficient, super low power, and they are much cheaper. And because of that, they kind of have the edge in a lot of ways. And I wish that Nintendo would look at maybe adopting some of that. I don't know if obviously Nintendo would never go into business with Apple, but other people are making ARM chips. It's sort of where the industry is going. And I hope that Nintendo at some point, because they haven't since the GameCube created a system that is equal to the technology of that generation. I think the GameCube was the last system that they actually created that was somewhat comparable in power to the PlayStation 2 and the Xbox One. And then they just stopped playing that game.
Yeah, that's a fair point.
And I mean, they do their own thing. That's Nintendo. I love Nintendo. I'm a Nintendo fan. I grew up with an SNES. I'm a Nintendo fanboy. And I don't think necessarily that Nintendo innovating on form factor and mechanics means that they shouldn't also be innovating in terms of their actual hardware.
That's fair. Nintendo doesn't what everybody else does.
Yeah. Yeah, they do.
At any rate, we're getting to the end of this episode. We're running along with all these good chats, so we're going to round things out, I think, with our last listener mail, which comes from Gerald, who is another European listener. He's from Austria.
I'm telling you,
Vienna.
Telling you, big in Europe.
Apparently,
after COVID goes down, we should go on a European tour.
We'll have to go do a world tour.
A world tour. Really. Very random of us.
When we're allowed to again. At any rate, Gerald's podcast listener, and he's answering the fact that I keep asking people to talk to us. So he finally got around, and apparently this is his first fan mail. I'm not sure if this is Gerald's first fan mail ever, or just the first fan mail to us. Either way, I'm grateful to have it. So thank you, Gerald, for taking that step. It's good to hear that you've been listening to us for ages. You go through Random and Retro Encounter a lot on your cruises, as he says, with his son in his baby buggy. So while his kid's sleeping and getting him to sleep while he's doing his walks, he's been taking part of Random and Retro. And he checks the site on a daily basis. And as with, I think, most people, the biggest thing he comes to the podcast for and our website for is that a lot of the episodes make him want to buy the game that he hears about. So, as it seems to be the theme with the other reader emails we've gotten today, there's usually a quick trip to the eShop or the PSN store or wherever your local collection shop is after listening to an episode of Random or Retro Encounter for that matter. And also, he has also gotten into the Trail series because of this. And again, we're sorry for your time that is now gone. Otherwise, he enjoys going down memory lane with a lot of our episodes, i.e. when we were talking about Saga. Apparently, he's someone who wants to talk Saga Frontier with Pat. So there was an audience for you, Pat. There you go. Someone appreciated you bringing up Saga Frontier. And I'm guessing there's a lot of that retro as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. whereas Jono need not apply, apparently.
No, I'm happily excluded from that party.
He also loves hearing episodes with Gwen on it when she talks Pokemon, which we were talking in the pre-show with the recent release of the expansion. Gwen actually did play that. I have not yet, so I think we'll need to get Alana on here and they can chat about that expansion. Maybe Peter will make time for us as well, because I know he was playing it too. So if we can get some people come on here and get Gwen back on the episode, and John, you haven't chatted with Gwen yet either, so yeah, I think it's time for her to make a return. And now with summer being here, she's home and free, not doing homeschool, so that can happen.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
Yeah. And and he loves the episodes that we talk about whole franchises with such knowledge. Again, it seems to be the theme to bring up those features. We have a ton of features from, as Steph brought up on the last episode you and I were on, that there seems to be someone at the site for like each franchise. We have like an expert for each one. So yeah, they all have something to say generally when they're on here. And otherwise, yeah, he just brings up some issues he's had with the past podcasts episodes where, as a non-native English speaker, it can be hard to, when the volume levels and everything are all over the place. So I'm hoping that since I've gotten everybody recording individually, that has helped with balancing levels and people can understand things a bit more clearly now with less lag and stuff. And he was bringing up some stuff that hopefully in our impending site upgrades will be a lot easier to search through episodes for specific game coverage and stuff, which you can kind of do right now, but it's a little clunky on the website as it is.
Oh, just you wait.
I think it's going to be easier, when we do a conversion, because we've got a whole lot of work going behind the scenes, so there'll be more in that in the coming future. But there's some good reshaping that Mike Salvato and his team of assistant minions who have stepped in with him are putting into the site. So yeah, he has no questions for us. Just keep doing what we're doing, and it's what he feels is, which I think is hard praise for all of us at RPG Fan. It's the only place he goes to for good reviews and honest opinions, and the podcast is the only thing where he can listen to people who are also passionate about RPGs.
That's really nice to hear. Thank you.
Right? His PS2 was cover the new Brigandine game, which I don't know if you were one of the ones, Gerald, who applied to win the new Brigandine game. I hope you did, and I hope you won. I'm not sure, but I know all that just went out and got announced. So, otherwise, the coverage is there. That review went live last week, I think, while I was on vacation. So, yeah, it's there now, Gerald. Go check it out.
Yeah.
And that was that. That was all our listener mail. Thank you so much. That was a delight to have a bunch.
It really was. We would love to have some more.
Yeah. In future episodes, we'll space them out a bit more, so it's not so much. But it was nice getting it all at once and just having some fun discussion to talk about. Thank you, everybody. And yes, like John says, give us more. You can do that at podcast@rpgfan.com. You can also find us on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook at rpgfan.com. Check out our Twitch stream where Scott kind of helms things with Kat and Kyle and Max occasionally on there as well. And I think Caitlin moonlights every once in a while as well. So we got peeps there playing some fun stuff.
Yeah.
We have other podcasts. We've got Retro Encounter, which is coming up. I recently revisited my Trials of Mana save and went through the post game because Solosi and I jawed about that for an upcoming episode of Retro Encounter. So check that out. And we also have our Rhythm Encounter episodes if you want to go listen to some backlog of old video game music stuff that we talked about.
I've been doing that lately, actually.
You have?
Yeah, I listened to some.
Getting up to speed?
Yeah, well, I'm not even getting up to speed. I occasionally listen to it, but I just thought, you know what, I really want to get into this. And I actually heard some amazing music from a variety of different games. I highly recommend it. It's not just talking about, like, if you've never listened to it before, it's not just talking about music. You actually get to hear the music, and that's really cool. Also, I've been listening to later episodes. Caitlin is a phenomenal host.
She was doing a great job with that. Like, her and Mike, really, like, their passion came out. And I mean, all the hosts were very passionate about music, but yeah, Caitlin did a great job when she picked it up. And it was just, it's such a joy to listen to and to discover a bunch of different music, because a lot of time for myself too, I was only limited to the series I was playing, and there's plenty of other series that I was missing out on. So yeah, it opens you up to some new and exciting stuff that you may not usually find in your wheelhouse. And then lastly, we've got Hat and Eric, who regularly host the Phoenix Edge podcast. So please go check them out, watch their live podcast stream on YouTube, and pop in and say hi to them, see what they're talking about. Otherwise, thank you so much for listening to us, everybody. I mean, I know it was a lot of just Jono and I talking, but hopefully we're still entertaining. You don't want to replace us just yet.
Nope.
Maybe, I don't know. Got plenty of other good people in the wings if we had to, I suppose. Joe did do a good job, I guess.
Yeah, really lighting a fire under our butts. We gotta step up.
Right? Anyways, which Joe will never admit to themselves. The always downplay, but no, Joe did a great job once again, and everybody else on that episode. Just great discussion. Thank you so much. And listeners, thank you so much for continuing to be here and giving us something to do. Until the next episode, cheers.
Cheers. Have a good day.
Or night. Or evening. Whatever.
That's a nice awkward ending. Perfect for us. Okay, I'll shut her down.
Yeah. Never know how to shut up, apparently.